Daniel Schoonmaker. I'm the Executive Director of West Michigan Sale Business Forum, and I am pleased to welcome to our event today. This is our April forum, Leveraging Design Thinking as a Strategy for Sustainability. And I am very pleased to welcome Kate and Bill, who will be our featured speakers today. For those that are not familiar with the organization, the forum works with business institutions to promote practices that advance climate leadership, community resilience, social justice, and the creation of a circular economy. I'd also like to highlight a couple of upcoming events that the forum is hosting in the next month here, including our next monthly forum, Next Generation Mobility, which will be on May 10, featuring some exciting initiatives that are happening at City of Grand Rapids related to automotive vehicles and other investments. And we're hosting a special membership, a special benefit for members as well, a professional headshot event on May 14th in partnership with Bird Plus Bird Studio. Please make an appointment to come on out and get some updated shots for your social media, speaking engagements, professional photos on your website, and whatever other values you may find from that. Happy to offer that as a value to our members and stakeholders. And please find information on that and our May forum on our website, WMSBF.org. We are also hopeful to have some announcements about upcoming in-person events that will be kicking off this summer. That will be consistent with our past physical distancing and COVID safety requirements. Please also keep an eye out for some exciting announcements for those. Video of today's program and the prior sessions are available on demand at no cost on West Michigan Sale Business Forum's YouTube channel. After this event, you'll also receive an email with a link to its video, including a feedback survey, along with any additional notes that come off today's program that we indicated would be shared as well. All the forum programs are primarily funded through membership donations. If you are not yet a member of the organization, I'd strongly encourage you to become one. We are now in the midst of our annual membership drive, and it's a fantastic opportunity and time to do so. To that effect, I'd like to recognize our new corporate members, Flatwater Farms and Irwin Seating Company, as well as our new professional members, Ryan Coe, Cody Fridley, Amy Colenda, Lakeland Brown, James Wilson, and Gary Vincent. Following this event, we are happy to welcome you to a virtual networking session, a separate breakout room to meet more of our members. Link will be posted in the chat shortly, as well as at the end of the events. Finally, you may also be interested in learning about our various working groups, including those with upcoming meetings, such as our Solid Waste Task Force, which is meeting next week, Wednesday, April 28th, as well as our regional programs in Lakeshore and Southwest Michigan. Email Rose Spickler to get involved with any of our working groups, and Rose will drop her email in the chat here shortly. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for our program today, Leveraging Design Thinking as a Strategy for Sustainability. Our speakers are the founders of Further Degree, Kate Hunt, co-founder and design strategist, and Bill Holzinger Robinson, partner and business strategist. Kate and Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. Make sure our audio is working okay. Can you hear us?
I can, coming loud and clear.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. We just perused the participant list, and we see usually if you're looking at an audience, you're hoping for some friendly faces. There are some friendly people in the audience, but we can't see their faces, so I don't know what good that's doing.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, I thought you were going to say they look very unfriendly. I was like, no, they're very nice people.
No, not at all.
So I guess we should go ahead and share our screen. Oh, let's see.
You're able to do that?
Let's give it a try. Okay.
And we are a go.
Okay, excellent. So we're Bill and Kate of Further Degree. Oop, I gotta get my clicking down here. Hold on.
So as Dan said, the topic of our talk is leveraging design thinking as a strategy for sustainability. We've been using design thinking as a framework for problem solving with our clients for quite a few years now, and have just kind of recently, I guess recently, have moved into more kind of focus on sustainability as an outcome that we're looking for in the majority of the work that we do. Further, Degree is an instigator of change within organizations that aspire to create a more resilient future. All of our work as an organization has really been, for the past number of years, has been purpose-driven. We want to leave the world a better place in all of the work that we do. And I think we do that in unique ways, or we look for kind of our impact in unique ways. Our customers kind of range from working directly with presidents and CEOs of companies, essentially trying to be their thinking partners as they navigate through kind of times of ambiguity for their organization or for their industry, all the way down to small nonprofits that are directly looking to create a positive change or impact in their world, in the good that they're trying to do.
So we do this with a pretty big team. This is just a look at the team that's working directly with us on the New Futures project, which is what we're going to be covering as a bit of a case study today. So it's primarily Bill and I, but we have a great pool of designers and researchers and business strategists that have a similar outlook and are focused on creating impact in their work.
So a little bit of context in all of this. So we mentioned design thinking. I don't want to assume that everybody has quite as intimate relationship with design thinking that we have, but we use design thinking as a framework for all of the problem solving and the work that we do. Saying that we do design thinking is really kind of an imperfect description of the work that we do. It's a framework, mindset, and kind of an evolving set of tools that we think help organizations really manage ambiguity and align ambitions within the organization.
When we feel like we are doing it well and when we see others doing it well, it's really about asking the right questions and having an opportunity to make implicit stresses, factors, whatever, explicit and repeatable solutions that can address those issues.
This is the design thinking framework that we do, and we won't go into any great detail with that. But as Kate was saying, I mean, I think a lot of this is for us when we're introducing this framework to an organization. It's really about they're going to undergo some change. They're using a lot of language today that has made them successful as an organization. And as they go through transformation, they really need to change, and design thinking ends up being a new language for a new land that they're moving to. And so it gets everybody kind of struggling with new concepts. We like design thinking because, as Kate was saying, it's very scalable as well. So we can get people using just a single tool that'll be valuable, or we can get them kind of using this kind of four-phased framework for thinking about kind of larger problems, either from projects to initiatives to thinking about organizational strategy as well.
Another thing that, just for a piece of grounding before we dig into the case study, is this idea of speculative design and foresight. This is a practice that asks us to consider the ethical, cultural, environmental, political, and economic challenges of future products, services, and systems, which has really lent itself to this focus on sustainability. It's been a natural fit for us. Obviously, the impact and challenges of these of product, services, and systems is at the core of how we can plan for the future and account for the choices that we're making as designers, as business people, et cetera.
There's something interesting, I think, we use speculative design as a component of the toolbox that we have for design thinking on the whole. And one of the reasons why we really like speculative design is because it really drives home, or maybe even emphasizes, this need for extending abductive reasoning. And just to get geeky for a second, there are three kind of identified forms of logic or of reasoning. Thinking about deduction, that a conclusion is going to be guaranteed because the conclusion draws very, very specifically from the facts that are entered into the argument. And there are very few instances that we use deduction in business. Most often, we think about inductive reasoning when we think about business. Market research is an act of inductive reasoning. All of these things have happened in the past, and so we have a pretty good indication that we think they're going to happen in the future. And so you're looking at probable futures. We like this notion of abduction because you're taking your best shot at understanding the conditions of the world in the future by an incomplete set of information. And I think as we think about disruptions in the market, changing environment, political landscape globally, equity and inclusion, and all of the changes that are happening in our world, we're working with an incomplete set of data. And so really embracing this notion of abductive logic becomes really important, and speculative design really helps with that.
So the real name of our talk, the struggle is real and it's worth it. So I think just everything that Bill just mentioned is really the understanding or the foundation for this idea. What you were promised, though, what the description of this talk was, is an open exploration of Further Degree's role as managing partner for New Futures Lab. This will be a look at the design thinking as a catalyst for sustainability through speculation on the future of the food packaging industry. So the way we're going to go about this, though, is through a provocation, not a recommendation. It's a work in progress. This is a client we are still working with, that we have been working with for
3 years.
And we want to just sort of share these 4 steps. So what did they want? Where did we start? What have we done? And where are we now? So real basic kind of outline of the next few slides.
And although we would like to share like a fair amount of detail, a lot of the work that we do is based upon helping them develop some strategy. And so we're not going to be able to share kind of everything at a detail. So you're going to see some images that are like, if we hold a microscope up, we can't even,
still can't read them.
we can't read them. Oh, everybody's on a computer. We can't even Zoom. And there's a good reason for that. So we want to be as transparent as we can about what we've kind of learned through this process and where we're headed. But, obviously there are things that we can't completely share.
So just to be real clear up front, though, too, so the client that we're going to be sharing this case study about is Fabrical. They're a 71-year-old plastics manufacturer in Kalamazoo. They have facilities all over the country. They are the leading converter of PLA, plant-based polymers. And the New Futures Lab is an initiative that we established with them couple of years ago now.
Yeah,
a year plus.
Yeah.
But it was a couple years in the making.
Well, and it's interesting to just as a side note, we never thought we would find ourselves working for a plastic food or a food packaging company focused on plastics and PLA and fiber and things like that. But it's interesting in thinking about being purpose driven. So much of the work that we believe that so much of the work that we're doing is focused on asking the question, by working with this client, are there opportunities for us to start to affect systemic change or be involved in a conversation. And so we're very kind of intimately now involved in this conversation, but not only where is this organization kind of going in the future and what are they planning for, but also in the food packaging industry of thinking about, diverting food waste from landfill, about compostable labeling, there are a whole series of things that we've gotten involved in, using this as a real opportunity to kind of expand our influence in the purview of the discussions that we're able to have. So here's the kind of history of things, right? So here's what they asked. There was this desire from fabrical in the early days, generally to become more innovative. And when a client says we want to be more innovative, typically we immediately go to, oh, that is shorthand for not innovation per se, but probably a whole series of other things. Things like we don't know or have as intimate a relationship with our customers as we used to have. Change is hard for us. We've been doing the same thing for a very long time and don't know how to reorganize. We're not shared in our values across the organization. We don't have a good view into what the future looks like and if the disruptions that are coming are real or not. So it's shorthand for a whole bunch of things. And to get our arms wrapped around that, typically we focus on framing.
So this idea of framing is really critical because we see it as an act of truth seeking before problem solving. Often, all those components that Bill just described are a symptom of not fully understanding the challenges at hand and or not having alignment around those, not having everyone in the organization understand or see the challenges ahead the same way.
And we don't necessarily see, when we say alignment, we don't necessarily mean that everybody agrees on the direction, but everybody has a clear understanding of points of view, why the organization is going in the direction it's going, and if there are outliers in the company as well.
Again, that idea of making the implicit explicit. So we do, sometimes we talk about organizational therapy, a little bit of design therapy as part of one of the outcomes here, because we do a lot of just unearthing the realities that are at play and giving name to them and sort of using our beginner mindset in a new industry to say, is this normal? Is this just part of your organization? How might we address these things?
And these framing exercises, you can go to the next one.
Okay.
There are things that we'll do both around kind of measuring what we call organizational intent, as well as organizational ambition. And so this is an example of that intent activity. We'll do things like stakeholder interviews to listen for tensions within the company, and you'll hear things like, we're most interested in either delivering green products or being a green business.
Those things are not necessarily fully at odds, but there might be tension in where resources can be focused, how much time and effort can be spent on one or the other. And sometimes those things are in competition to some degree.
And all of this is the measurements that we're taking here is more of a feel from everybody.
An organizational read on the room, really.
Yeah, because it's basically, we have full kind of understanding that those things that are most salient in the leaders' heads are how people are going to make decisions. And so even at this level, even though we haven't necessarily been scientific about it, it leads to a really interesting conversation about the state of the business today, where they want to go in the future, and what the gap looks like between the two. How hard is it going to be to move to the future?
So just a quick comment on the previous, 2 slides ago now, that was just a quick shot of an initial framing workshop that we facilitated with Fabrical a number of years ago now around a very specific component of their business. It was around a material innovation space that they were looking at and trying to understand kind of where they wanted to go next. They'd made an investment and were thinking about the future. And as we tend to, we tried to listen a little bit bigger to what was being said and how the assets and strengths of the organization were being utilized and where there might be potential for new impact or bigger impact or sort of more organized impact. And those, I'll go back just for a second. This intention model was one of, I think, 10 or 12 that emerged through those stakeholder interviews to really help us understand the dynamics of the organization in a lot of different ways. Sort of the culmination of that phase of the early work of framing was this sort of progression going from responsive reactions to planned innovation to organizational sustainability. So even though we didn't come in or weren't brought in specifically to focus on sustainability, it was really clear really quickly that they had potential to really grow into that space. They already had a bit of a market leadership position in their PLA Greenware brand. And so we really have used that as the jumping off point into a sort of a bigger picture strategy around sustainability. So this is the long part. We're gonna a laundry list of diverging and converging activities. So a hallmark of design thinking, I'll just share real quick, is we showed a 2x2 at the beginning, but a double diamond is another thing you might hear talked about when hearing about design thinking. And the whole idea is really to be diverging to learn and converging to make sense of. And so it can happen linearly, it can happen cyclically, it should happen in sort of a nested, integrated way. If you are always kind of going wide to learn and understand and really look at the context, and then using that information to converge around sort of unified points of view, design principles, insights that you can act on, then you're practicing design thinking. It can look a lot of different ways with the actual tools that you're using in every instance, but we're going to kind of flip through a number of things that we've accomplished in the last year plus 2 years or so with Fabrical and with the New Futures Lab.
So hold on to your seat.
Yeah, try to go quick, but not too fast.
So we've talked about this thing called New Futures Lab. As the organization wanted to become more innovative, actually the first notion was that we wanted to create an incubator for the company. So a group that was set a little bit apart, that wasn't necessarily encumbered by kind of either existing culture or business processes, to be extremely forward thinking and develop a number of kind of spin-off business opportunities that would lead to some organizational growth. And so that's where we came up with this kind of initial purpose statement or vision for New Futures Lab, this design-led team delivering long-term growth strategies through continuous innovation to accelerate sustainable business transformation for Fabrical.
So we were lucky enough to get buy-in on this early to sort of bake sustainable business transformation in from the get-go, but the way that has come to light and the way it's come to life, I should say, has changed a bit. So this was sort of the original pitch, was to spend about to really focus like 80% of our time on new products, new markets, transformational, sort of game-changing kind of work, looking for those opportunities for new businesses that might be something that had enough traction long-term to actually overtake parts of the rest of other parts of the business, with 20% of that focus really on core existing products and markets, focused on helping the teams evolve and change and learn more about innovation, design thinking, all those shorthand things.
We refer to that collectively as capacity building.
Mm-hmm.
So much of the work that we're trying to do is set the path and then work ourselves out of a job. So 20% of our time focused on that.
One of the first major acts, though, was to develop a program. So this idea of formalizing the approach to finding, evaluating, prototyping, and launching projects. We'll talk about it a little bit later. There are some design principles that were also developed in support of this, but all of it hinges on the idea of a bias toward conservation and regeneration of resources. So if anything is going to have potential, be viable, something that's scalable in a meaningful way and eventually profitable, must also be grounded in this idea of conservation and regeneration of resources.
And this whole program is an iterative one. So, you know, kind of constantly going after finding ideas, evaluating them, prototyping, launching, you know, depending upon the size of the launch that may generate the development of more ideas. Again, another hallmark of design thinking, but it's a fully iterative process.
If we're gonna get through our laundry list, we gotta pick it up. So as part of that effort, we did some early research. We wanted to sort of repeat this act of listening bigger and looking wider and outside of food packaging, which is, you know, containing a food or food substance and moving it safely from production to the consumer. And that's kind of the A to B story that you might think of with this within this space. We looked at a lot of different things and sort of the broader influences in the world right now and landed on this idea of food mobility, which is we refer to as the equitable and sustainable movement of nutrients through communities from cultivation to consumption to value recovery. So that creates a really big space for potential opportunities, for areas to focus, for places to innovate, really.
It's an active reframing. So we frame around what's organizational intent and ambition and what's possible today. This is like a reframing within that container. Then how do we expand beyond what we do today? And
should really include existing and potential assets of the organization, both physical assets and knowledge and people-based assets. So the next couple things are some support of this need for and focus on food mobility. These are some things pulled from the Institute for the Future. So this is the first place we really started to pull foresight work into the design thinking process through secondary research, and then followed up with some storytelling about what that might look like. So I'm just going to flip through these, I think.
Yep.
Oops.
Yep.
I skipped one.
Yeah. So much of the conversation is about getting people to think about the problem space differently. And so giving these, you know, examples of places where Fabrical might problem solve and partner is one of those active kind of thinking much more expansively. All the way thinking about
one of our favorites, grade A roadkill.
Yeah.
So this idea of design principles is something I mentioned earlier. One of the shifts in sort of that we've noticed that's important when trying to become more innovative or use design thinking in your day-to-day practice is really sort of that act of changing the way that you work or the way you think about work. And so design principles is one way to really emphasize those things. So we spent some time looking at like, what do we think is important? What needs to happen as part of a reaction to old habits and a support of, you know, future hopes and desires for how the organization might work.
There's a well-worn adage that I use all the time that says every organization is perfectly designed for the results it gets. And that being the case, you know, puts an extra exclamation point, I think, on these design principles. If we really want to change the way we work, if we're looking for new outcomes, we need to think about how we're designed, and offering up design principles as a guide for how we might work together, and how knowledge might flow through the organization when we make decisions is a critical one.
So real quickly, there are sort of four main components here. The blue circle is this idea of general principles for innovation, which are really those things that we hope will travel through the organization, looking toward a preferred future, solving for the system, taking action through iteration, transparently collaborating with both internally and with external stakeholders, discerning people in context, which is really about research and understanding and getting close to those we're trying to serve. And then how we get to then, which is really about trying to find the right partners and get the ideas in the right hands, whether it's ours, one of our colleagues, someone else's outside of the organization, whatever is going to do the thing that gets the real work and the real impact made. And then we sort of built that all around this balanced breakthrough model that centers on a bias toward conservation and regeneration of resources, which I mentioned earlier. And then the yellow and green are components that are more focused on the lab's activities, which is this speculative interests and insights, which focused on continuing to do research and looking at the business environment and understanding what might be coming, what might not, what potential and probable futures there are out there, as well as then that green part, project principles for execution, which meant we will continue to develop design principles that are specific to each project and each area of focus as they emerge.
All of that, right. All of that has led us to thinking about kind of our practice on the whole and how to bring in, how to recruit other talent, bring in other frameworks into the program and the work that we're doing. So we've reached out to the Institute of Design in Chicago. We've able to, we sponsored a class as well as worked with them on a piece of research. This is the piece from the class. And again, very, very kind of future looking and oriented and kind of reimagining the world into a preferable space.
This was all focused on the Good Food Purchasing Program, which is a really expansive, interesting program if you ever have a chance to look it up.
Which is tied to the Chicago food policy group as well. So we were able to kind of partner and convene with those folk.
There's a whole other event in there that we didn't get a chance to add, but the work in Seattle around food packaging labeling, which we'll have to save for another time. But this is in a little bit of linear order. So a thing that came next after that, or as that project was ending, is this effort around drivers of change. So obviously COVID became a big influencer of business and how business is getting done. And so some of our work shifted pretty significantly from this broad space around food mobility and innovating or looking for new businesses and services to launch out of the business, and took a turn toward core strategy and understanding the market and as it was changing under these new conditions that we've all experienced over the last year.
And mostly those changes in the focus of our work took place because we had been looking into the future and we had been looking at trends and trying to kind of anticipate where things needed to go. And so it just kind of think made perfect sense for us to offer new perspective.
It fit nicely because we had been looking ahead, and then most of those trends were accelerated pretty significantly. But in order to really understand the environment that we were heading into and we're living in already, we launched another research project, which is really, again, about going divergent and understanding the environment that you're working in and the people and how they're affected. So drivers of change was a sort of the culmination of some of that work. Again, I'll flip through this a little bit. I think we had 19 or 23 of these that came about as of spring last year. This is just an example of one. Risk assessment becomes a daily mindset. Obviously, that was the way we were working and the way we were relating to one another was really underpinned with this idea of what's the risk I'm dealing with? What am I going to be facing? What kind of exposure am I potentially creating for myself in any and every choice that we were making at the time? So we looked at signals sort of in the environment with secondary research, looking at news that was happening, understanding the bigger systems that were being affected by these things. Obviously, we're working for a company that cares about food service packaging and getting food from one place to another, which became a really hot area. But there's also a level of complexity around manufacturing and safety and all of that. And so we had to sort of look, again, wider than the immediate area that you would assume for this sort of business. So those signals led to some implications and how might we use to sort of, again, give some boundary and opportunity space for solving for new challenges that were emerging.
And then since then our focus has changed. So it's no longer, it hasn't been 80-20 for
At least a year.
at least a year. We've been focused much more on internal development, using design thinking as a tool for strategy development, developing value propositions and new business models for the organization has taken the primary focus. We're engaged in a piece of research right now, really trying to understand the broader landscape around how people are making decisions around packaging and driving towards sustainable choices. But really, this since last late spring, I guess, we've been focused on this strategy development and using design thinking as a tool to, again, help leaders kind of both diverge and converge around what we know, signals and implications in the market, and try to make some really kind of agile strategies for the organization and thinking about its future.
So we noticed, or you might notice here, strategy development with a focus on value propositions and new business models. It's not necessarily, I don't know that those would be classically called design thinking tools, but they are tools that we like to use that we think work very similarly. Design thinking visualizes and makes the implicit explicit. And we use those as that opportunity to diverge and converge and make sense of things. So one of the sort of takeaways from that work is that there's a world we can live in if we act, and there's a world that we may or may not live in if we don't act. And so the theme and underlying drive towards sustainable change has been present all throughout. And I think last on this laundry list is this idea of capacity building through design thinking training. So this is a look at a Miro board, and those last few were also Miro boards of where we're convening teams online digitally to do all that post-it work that you may have pictured when you thought of design thinking in a digital space. And this has become a repeatable thing where we're teaching the language, the methods, the tools, all through this lens actually of the future of food, which is again a way that we're just adding in the food mobility, the broader focus, the what's our impact and role in the system question throughout all the work.
So where are we now? So in looking at all that work that we've done and thinking about the patterns and what we might do again, and what in fact we would insist upon doing again as we engage in this work, there are really four areas that we think we've seen as a kind of pattern in our work and that we think is really valuable in trying to kind of create any kind of a durable change within an organization.
It's really the way we see design thinking and foresight catalyzing this sustainable support. The sort of premise of the whole talk is that there are themes running through it. There are repeatable processes, and this idea of framing, formalizing, furthering, and using foresight is really where we landed with that.
So framing is all about what's the investment thesis for change, innovation, and sustainability. Can we get an understanding of where the organization is today from an ambition perspective, and see how closely or how not closely it's aligned with its intent, and then what kind of actions come out of that. We formalize things, so development of frameworks, tools, and language to add in communicating change in new ways to problem solve.
So looking back at what we shared, framing obviously was that workshop early, and we continue to use framing activities as new challenges arise with the New Futures Lab. Formalizing was actually creating the lab initially. That was an act of formalization. It was putting a name toward and giving even a brand within the organization to say, like, we are investing in this. There is organizational support for it, and we're taking this new path seriously.
You may, as an organization, have been talking about change. but here is evidence
demonstration
of
of
an
it, yeah.
investment and change, which is important.
And that, you know, is sort of at that big higher level, but within that is also those individual frameworks, tools, et cetera, that you can visualize and show and actually point to and externalize cognition and share those ideas with others.
Furthering it is about bringing people in. It's about identifying project champions, building capacity throughout the organization, and doing a fair amount of coaching to really make the complex actionable. I mean, it's all a 72-year-old business. There's a lot of complexity, not only in the industry, but in systems that have been built out over, literally over generations. And so, I think often people are frozen, not necessarily knowing what kinds of changes to make because of the complexity. And that's part of the work that we try to do.
And because of that, it's super easy to just stay in the regular day-to-day. And so making change takes a lot of extra energy and effort. And so building that capacity, showing people sort of how to work differently, even in the regular day-to-day ways, to free up more opportunity for creativity and honestly risk taking, to have a little bit more energy for that is really what furthering is about here.
And then foresight. So preparing the organization for the future by imagining multiple preferable futures, and futures with a plural, where sustainability is an assumed outcome. So what's the world going to look like? Where are there other disruptions? Let's not do this to predict and kind of place bets on something. But by doing this, it's an act of creating a certain nimbleness and agility in their decision making and kind of the scope and purview of what they look at a regular basis, to be prepared for the future.
Yeah. Phew. I think we got through it all mostly on time. And we thank everybody for the time and attention on this. If anybody wants to get in touch, we're hello@furtherdegree.com.
Or if there are any questions.
Yeah, there's
that
questions,
came up.
I'm assuming, coming up next.
Got some questions. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kate Bill. I learned a lot today. If you have any questions, please drop those in the Q&A or chat here. To get us started, I have a question of my own. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you were able to integrate some of the what, for lack of, I'm going to call it, kind of the equity-centered conversations like food mobility into your initial design process or initial research process?
Yeah, I think if I'm getting the question, we didn't necessarily come into it assuming that was going to be a central part of the work, but as we took a broad look at the just trends in the world, it was obvious that these systems are deeply linked, and there's really not a way to separate equity and access to food and food security and all of that from the systems that protect and process and move food. So it really seemed like there was no way around that if we really wanted to be looking at things from a systems level and look at a more sustainable opportunity for future impact.
I've got a question coming in from DeAndre Jones, and I'm gonna edit this a little bit because I know what he's working on, and he's working to develop some community centers and community centers in West Michigan, and I'm and he's asked how would you go about finding best practices in sustainability, but I might revise that a little bit and ask how would you incorporate a sustainability aligned design process into the development of a community center?
I mean, I think that everything that we would recommend starts with framing and understanding, sort of like we always sort of lean toward research. I mean, I think in any case, we're at least speaking from our experience and our place in this kind of work, we are not experts in any particular industry or other than design and strategy. And we sort of leverage that intentionally as an opportunity to ask questions and learn. So we really focus on that discovery and learning up front. So even, I think that transfers though to anybody even that is an expert in a space. I think you can sort of take that mindset and say, even though I have a ton of experience, even though I've learned a lot in this work for however many years I've been doing it, there's always an opportunity to learn more, especially from those you're trying to serve. So really understanding who you're trying to serve with that solution that you have in mind, and what their true needs are, and make sure you're not kind of approaching it as a solution without a problem. I'm sure there are lots of them, but getting really explicit about those things for yourself, for others that you're bringing into it, partners, and then stakeholders that are going to have the opportunity to participate in whatever is developed.
It's a good, I'd add to that an emphasis on when we do framing activities. We usually do stakeholder interviews. So who has a stake in the work, and even starting off and defining more broadly who has a stake in the work, and using them as a center of the research itself, is incredibly important, because you start to understand different tensions in that community, and opportunities for serving differently, I think I'd
also make sure to point out too, especially in community-driven work, that it's really critical to not just center and talk to the people that you're trying to serve, but really try to value their input and their lived experiences. It's critical to value the time that anyone might put into this too. So a corporate project where we're interviewing somebody that is on this team or is contributing to the outcomes is one thing. If we're in a community setting, I think reaching out to people and compensating them for their time, and considering all of the effort and resources that might go into coming together in whether it's digitally or in person, and really being person-centered in that way as well, around the experience that you're creating for anybody that's going to participate in the work, is really critical.
I have one additional question. I think that's going to be my last question for the day. So you talked a little bit about the input of risk and the influence of COVID-19 throughout this process. I'm curious for how that may have shifted some of your initial expectations with the change in the company's core market. So single-use containers for food service industry, over a year in which that market was so dramatically impacted.
So a couple things come to mind for me with that. I mentioned at one point the work we did in Seattle with a number of stakeholders around, that was focused on legislation regulating the labeling of compostable food serviceware, and that was a big area of focus, and I think something that we saw and expected to lead to a lot of other convening activities, not just, so we had worked with a commercial composter, someone from Zero Waste Washington that was working on legislation, people from the city of Seattle, and as well as the National Composting Alliance, and I'm forgetting the name of it.
U.S. Composting Council.
There you go, U.S. Composting Council, thank you. And really trying to bring together opposing viewpoints and or certain interests or priorities, and we're hoping that would turn into a much larger convening of other manufacturers to really come to the table around a specific topic that was actionable, that has momentum. The effect of COVID-19 and some of the changes is with all of the to-go scenarios with food really, unfortunately, changed the pacing, I think, of some of that legislation. I know the change in Seattle was set to go into effect in July last summer and had been pushed out significantly. I know we saw that in a lot of other states and municipalities that had to sort of backpedal on some of their regulation. So it changed a little bit around the pacing of needing to get some of those things done, but I think also gave a little bit more runway in some ways to understand what was possible, and also accelerated some other things like tamper evidency and understand and how to-go food was traveling and maintaining quality and things like that.
Well, and even just the amount of extra burden that those that those containers are putting on households.
Mm-hmm.
People trying to manage all the to-go food that they were getting for themselves at their home, as opposed to throwing it. Like understanding where things going, I think is raising level of expectation and awareness from the consumer on the whole too. Which
it really
changing expectations and how they're making business decisions around that.
Yeah, I think the sort of emphasis on and sort of spotlight on what you're consuming as an individual was a lot hotter in the last year, because it wasn't distributed across many locations. You're in one place at your home with however many opportunities to manage your waste, and or not so many. And that really has changed consumer expectation as far as we see it.
Great. Kate and Bill, thank you so much for taking the time taking the time to speak with us today. Thought it was a wonderful presentation. Before I wrap up, any final thoughts to add?
Haven't we spoken enough?
Fair enough.
This was great. We became members of the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum this last year. We believe in the work that you guys are doing, and are excited to meet more of the folk that were in the audience today listening in, and really want to build out our network so that we can continue to do good in the world.
I was going to say, I think too, we're sort of at I would say in our infancy in the sustainability journey, and kind of how we're bringing that into our work. But we're excited, again, to Bill's point, to learn from others and to partner in whatever ways. So thanks everybody for the time and for the work that y'all are doing. I'm sure is very exciting.
Wonderful. On that note, and I think those who are more in the who follow the forums work more closely are already aware of this. We recently received a grant from the state of Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy to, among other things, engage the design the design and manufacturing and supply chain communities around the creation of circular investments, use of recycled content, and the designed for recyclability, and we're happy that Kate and Bill have agreed to help us out in some initial ideation and facilitation around that. And please keep an eye out for more information on that in the coming months here. And if that sounds like something that and we haven't already talked, that aligns closely with your interests, please feel free to drop myself or Rose a note, and we'll take steps to make sure you're included as that comes online in the not distant future here. Again, Kate and Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. For those who want to stick around for the networking session, you'll see that Rose dropped a link to that meeting in the chat, and that'll be starting starting shortly here.
Great, thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody.